I talk to parents a lot about sometimes we wait for our thoughts to change for us to change our behavior. But if we wait for our thoughts to change, nothing's ever going to change. You have to change your behavior first. So even if I don't feel like saying, thank you so much for taking out the garbage, you're a big help to our family, I'm going to say it. And then I'm going to get all of this feedback that's reinforcing like, oh, he came back calm. He came back and that it just totally dissipated all of that anger and frustration. And he complied to what I asked him to do.
You're listening to the Healthy Parenting Handbook podcast, just the thing we all said we needed when we became parents. Remember that? Thinking, where's the handbook for this? I'm your host, Katie Kimball from Kids Cook Real Food, and I've brought together experts in the fields of health, parenting, nutrition, and more to help you, parents who truly want to raise healthy, independent kids, becoming adults, get the information you need. Guys, parenting is the toughest and the most rewarding job in the world. Thank you for joining me to consult this Healthy Parenting Handbook as you try to do your best job raising kids intentionally. My guest today is Ralphie Jacobs from Simply on Purpose. She's a positive parenting educator and has so much good to say. Ralphie lives in Austin, Texas with her husband and their 4 daughters. As an early childhood education expert, Ralphie quickly learned that the best way to impact a child's life for good was to teach the parents. And I just love that part of her mission. She founded Simply on Purpose, where she has a community of over 600,000 families on Instagram. She writes about parenting, family, culture, and living with purpose. Her audio course has changed thousands of homes, and she travels across the country speaking at workshops on positive parenting. I know you're going to enjoy this interview so very, very much, my friends. It really encouraged and inspired me, and I've already got a few phrases in my parenting toolbox that are new and some goals for the rest of my own day in parenting. I hope that that is exactly what you walk away from this podcast interview with as well. Let's jump right in. Well, welcome, Ralphie. Thank you so much for being here. I think it's just so good for all of us parents to have these moments of reset where we get to hear some good ideas, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. And having a new, fresh mind always helps a lot.
Absolutely. So we're talking about looking for the good today. And I mean, you've got this great background. You're a parent. You've got the early childhood education. But I'd love to hear in your story, were there times where the early childhood education sort of disappeared and you went, this is so hard, like parenting is so hard? Or did you just slide right into it?
No, I mean, honestly, I totally am a believer that parenting looks like a lot of work for everyone. And, not even a person who talks about parenting all the time is safe from that, for sure. I felt like when my girls were little, I have 4 daughters, and I felt like when they were little, I was a great parent. I was like, I am like star parent. But then as they got older into their preteens, I was like, oh my word, what am I doing? I felt like a fish out of water and was really performing, I felt like, at a lower level than what I wanted to be performing at. I was really disappointed and discouraged about how I was parenting my preteen. And so I delve deep right back into all the books and all that stuff to really try to learn how to be a better parent for her. And just really, really fell in love with this whole mission of positive parenting. It felt like it was an answer for so many families. So that's when I started teaching it, double downing and switching my focus from children and teaching children to teaching parents. So that's like the backstory for me. But I mean, yeah, there were just so many times where I was like, oh, I am so embarrassed by the way that I responded to that situation. One in particular is the one day, my oldest daughter, I think she was about 11, she was asked to go and water flowers for an elderly lady that lived a couple blocks over. This was in the middle of the summer. I live in Texas, so the heat index was probably like 120 in middle of the day, and we're just sweating it out there. And this cute old lady is just so slow and adorable, but she's like, okay, you take the bucket and you go over here and you fill up with the hose. And she's like, oh, I forgot the hose. So she goes back, gets the hose. And my daughter's body language the whole time was like, ugh, like she's rolling her eyes and just can't believe it. And she's so, not positive body language. And I'm trying to smooth things over like, oh, it's fine. Don't worry about your pansies. My daughter's super responsible. Don't you worry about a thing. So we get back in the car, we drive home, and I'm just like seething, and the steam is coming out of my ears. And I park the car and I look back at her and I'm like, why did you do that? Don't you know that when you leave this house, you represent our family? Like, I'm giving her this like huge monologue about how embarrassing it was for me. So this was like all my story, right? Like, this is me. And I'm like, why did you do that? Tell me, why did you do that? And this is like a parenting trap, is when we ask our children why, because usually they don't know why. And perfect example is her answer to me was that she was hot. Like, she was behaving on a completely functional level. Like, she was just acting with her functional brain. And so it just was one of those moments where I was like, oh, if I had known better, I would have been more proactive. I would have like told her, hey, let's practice interacting with the elderly. Like, obviously we've missed that lesson and you need more practice. So yeah, there were just a lot of times where I'm like, you know what, this is a really good example of what not to do.
It's so funny that you just said we've missed that lesson, because we actually had a workshop in our summer camp last year on how to speak with the elderly. And so
No
many
way.
parents were like, oh, I hadn't done this. Like, I didn't even think of it. But now my kids are talking to the elderly at church, and it's so sweet.
Oh.
So it's hard to remember everything.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. There's so many blind spots that we don't realize until, the mess is already in front of us. And then we're like, oh yeah, I probably should have been better about that. But I mean, that's part of parenting, right? Is that we have to pivot and learn ourselves.
It sure is. If you're not willing to learn, you probably should have thought of that before you had kids, but too late now. Like, get on the horse. For context, Ralphie, for our audience, how old is that 11-year-old now?
She's 21.
Yes, you've been at this a long time.
Yeah, I have been. I've been teaching it for a long time, and I love it so, so much. It's changed our home foundationally. It's been such a wonderful gift, and it's been so good to teach other families and to see all the light bulbs in their minds. Like, oh, this feels right to me. This feels like truth. This feels like the way that I want to be.
It's so special the way you say, too, that teaching parents is the way to help the kids. Is the way to make that big impact. So I always tell my kids, when you say it, I need to know what your it is. So you've kind of waxed poetic about your it, the way that you parent now. And, every parenting system is a blend of like the philosophical and the practical. So let's start with the thinking. What's the thought foundation behind what you teach? And why is it different than what we sort of knee-jerk reaction do when we're not thinking?
Such a good question. Well, the reason why I fell in love with positive parenting, that's a philosophy that I'm totally behind, is that the pillars of that philosophy are so simple. And it's also backed by that brain science and behavioral research that we all love. So the 4 pillars are: be in control of yourself, teach your child, look for what's good, and ignore the junk. And all 4 of those pillars are harnessing a parent's power to create good. Now, it's really, really natural for a parent to use their time and energy to look for what's going wrong in their home. In fact, there's research that says that 85% of energy in a home is focused on what our children are doing wrong. Their weaknesses was they haven't either been developmentally appropriately taught those things, that they haven't developed into them, or they haven't actually been having the opportunity to learn them. And so a parent's true role is not to look for weaknesses and fixing the weaknesses, not being the warden or the police officer or the person that's yelling all the time. A parent's true role is to create lots of good behavior. And we do that through those pillars. We do that through our model. We do that through managing ourselves, having better self-management. That's actually a really great definition for a highly managed home, is a parent that has a lot of self-management. And then teaching our children, being deliberate about how we teach them, being proactive about how we teach them, and doing it in engaging ways that improves the probability that they will learn. And then looking for what's good. So we're building on skills by giving positive reinforcement and creating momentum by just using our time and energy to just call out what's good and shine that light and say what's best in them. And then the last one, of course, that parents always love this one, is that our role is to also ignore the stuff that's inconsequential. And most of the misbehaviors that are in our home are inconsequential. They just don't really deserve our time and our energy. It's just so much better for us to use our time and energy to build good. And we do that. 80% of misbehaviors in a home just disappear when we are creating more and more good in our homes, and our children are feeling more and more centered, well seen, and well loved.
That's a powerful statistic. 80%. So
Yeah.
1 in 5 problems that we're spending most of our energy attending to would disappear if we stopped paying so much attention to them. How, like, it's tough for parents, I think, because it is a little counterintuitive. We know that our brain's wired with 5 times as many fear circuits as joy circuits, right? So that turns into that negativity. But I love what you teach, and I know that it makes a huge difference. So what does this look like in a home where it's being practiced, right? We got the philosophical. What about the practical? What happens?
Okay, so I'll think of some real life examples. So looking for good, and ignoring junk. Usually those are two sides of the same coin. You have to kind of do them at the same time. So a child that's complaining about taking out the garbage, they're yelling like, "Why do I have to take out the garbage, mommy? I do everything around here. You don't do anything." And they're taking the garbage out, but they're yelling while they're taking it out, instead of a parent saying, "Oh my word, does it always have to come to this? Did I ask you to leave your leg or your arm in the garbage can? No, like, why are you acting like this?" And so they're reflecting, and they're not holding space. They're synchronizing the child that's yelling at them. Now they're yelling back at the child. A parent uses their knowledge of how good behavior develops by just focusing on what is good. And they say to the child, "Thank you so much for taking out the garbage. I really appreciate that. You are a great help in our home." So that's it. You shined the light on the best that's in your child. Your child feels like, "Oh my gosh, mom's here and I'm here. I really need to elevate. That's how I should be behaving," is how she's behaving. Another example, a child's like going up the stairs and she's screaming and yelling. She's going up the stairs and, she's like totally irate. She's so mad at everyone. Like, "I hate this house. I'm moving. I'm running away. I can't stand this. Oh, you're the worst mother in the world." As she's going up the stairs, she's stomping up the stairs. She goes to her room to calm down. She is performing something that's good. And you can say, "Thank you so much for going and calming down in your room. That's a wise thing to do." So focusing on what's good, kind of sifting through the junk, and also creating momentum by looking for what's good, being wise and adding fun to get good behavior going, right? Like sometimes parents assume, maybe we'll talk about this a little bit more later, is that children should just do the good things that are supposed to be done just because they're supposed to be done. But who wants to do that, right? Do you want to do that? I don't want to do that. I mean, that work looks like work for everyone. And so it's really important for parents to realize that they have this great power to create momentum by expressing gratitude for something that the child that has done that is little, right? Like, "Oh, you have been working really hard on your handwriting. Man, you're getting so good at that. And that's a lot of hard work." So that's going to help her to not hit her sister later on in the day, because you've created this positive behavioral momentum. What we know about behavior is behavior generalizes. You can't just focus on one behavior and have that only change that one behavior. It changes all behaviors. So when I say something that's good, or if I create momentum, or if I make something fun, it just builds a child's sense of everything is light. I can perform what is best for my child. And it creates even bigger and better things. And that's true with the negative behavior as well. If we focus on what's negative, it creates bigger negative things. So it's much, much better for a parent to look for what's good, create behavioral momentum. Parents have the power to do it. Parents have the power to change their homes indefinitely.
I can totally see how that happens, even if we just think about ourselves. When you start thinking negative thoughts, like we call it swirling, "Oh, we're really like swirling into the toilet," because you do, it absolutely generates more. And then when you're having a great day, it's hard for anything to get you down. So why would that not work the same way for our kids, right? With our behavior. It definitely is a lot of work, though, to think. It's mental work, it's emotional work, it's work to get these routines in. So what do you recommend for parents for whom this would be a big struggle? Like, we're really drawn to the negative. And I think what I'm hearing you say is, even if we don't respond with anger, but if we say, "Please change your tone of voice," or right, if we focus on the negative, is that even what you're saying? Like, eradicate that from our language?
Well, first of all, like I get it. I get that it's really hard to change the way that you have been raised, right? Or, I mean, neural pathways are so strong, especially if there's like a super speed highway, right? And we just don't have even enough time between the response to be stimulated to do and to think about it, to create space to think about it. Try it is all I can say. Give it a try, even if you don't feel like it. And that's something that I talk to parents a lot about. Sometimes we wait for our thoughts to change for us to change our behavior. But if we wait for our thoughts to change, nothing's ever going to change. You have to change your behavior first. People don't ever think their way into new behavior. We behave our way into new thinking. And that's how we change those neural pathways. We just start doing it, even if we don't feel like it. So even if I don't feel like saying, thank you so much for taking out the garbage, you're a big help to our family, I'm going to say it. And then I'm going to get all of this feedback that's reinforcing, like, oh, he came back calm. He came back, and that it just totally dissipated all of that anger and frustration. And he complied to what I asked him to do. So it gives you some feedback really quickly, and it's really self-reinforcing to a parent. And especially if a parent chooses to time it. There's research that if you stay calm, you respond in a calm way, that it shortens the argument, the anger, the tantrum, whatever it is, to most of it goes away within less than a minute if a parent just stays calm. And so it's just a better way to live as well. It's so disparaging to walk around just looking at what's going wrong all the time. And I know that's the default of our brain, as you mentioned, like, oh, I got to fix things because there might be danger out there, and I've got to, it's something's going wrong, and I'm going to find it. I'm going to find what it is that's going wrong. But it's not a happy way to live. It's so much better to learn how to say something that's good, because what happens to our brain is when we say something that's good, it tricks our brain, even if it hasn't been realized yet. Even if I say to my daughter, you are such a kind sister, and she's been struggling all day to be a kind sister. Even if I say that out loud, it tricks my brain into believing that it's reality. And because my brain is now fooled into believing that it's reality, I walk a path of gratitude for something that hasn't been realized yet. And my behavior is higher. And I believe that she is a big sister and a big kind sister. And because I believe that she's a kind sister, I behave like she is a kind sister. And because I'm behaving like she's a kind sister, she sees that in herself and starts behaving that way, because children behave the way that we see them. And so it has to start with us. It has to begin with us. Nowhere else is it going to start. So I would just say, just try it. Even if you don't feel like it, give it a try.
Yeah, I mean, that's really a gem. I feel like I want to write that down on my mirror. Like, we don't think our way into good behavior. We act our way into better thinking. It is so powerful. And I love the way you have these like catchphrases, that you're reflecting and holding space. I've heard you use the word synchronizing. And I just want to remind our listeners that, we'll have 30 or 40 minutes together today, but follow Ralphie on Instagram, because she's constantly like teaching and reteaching and getting those words into our brains, right? So that we can do it for our kids. Let's talk a really common habit that a lot of parents, I think, fall into, possibly because of the way we were parented. And that's saying things like, if you don't eat your broccoli, you won't get dessert, or that room needs to be clean by the time we leave, or you're not coming to the movie with the family. And even as I say it, like, I get this sharp edge in my voice and I hear the word not and don't, and right, all the negatives. How do we flip that script to positive parenting so our kids aren't feeling so threatened?
I love that you put this question on here, because you know how much I love talking about this. It's so simple. So first of all, both of those phrases, if you don't, then you won't. Those are both negative consequences, right? We throw those out a lot. We throw out negative consequences because we're gaining leverage. And parents who, are just shooting for their hip, that's the natural way to do it, is to try to gain leverage, to take something away from a child. But I want to remind parents over and over again, that's not your true role. Your true role is to add to your child's life, to create an expansive life. So it's not only actually easier to add to a child's life, because when we take away, it actually puts a lot of work on our shoulders. Okay, now I have to deal with a really grumpy child who hasn't been able to get this thing. And now I'm the warden, I'm the bad guy. So, and it creates a disconnection between your child. All of that is the negative consequences for you for taking away from your child. It is so much better to add to a child's life, and it's actually a lot easier to add to a child's life. The reason why it's so much better to add to a child's life is because you're creating positive associations with good behavior when you add to a child's life versus taking it away. So using a positive consequence instead. So instead of if you don't clean up your room, you can't go to the movie, you would say, everyone who has a clean room can come on to the movie with me. And I'm so excited to go with you. Woohoo! We're going to go. How can I help you clean up your room? Should I put on some fun music? So we're creating skills, we're building momentum, all of that, because I've decided to add to my child's life instead of take away. I say this, instead of a negative consequence, you're changing it into an encouragement. You're encouraging your child through your words. So we're building a skill and we're creating those positive feelings with a clean room. I mean, how many times do we nag and yell at our child for this disgusting, filthy health hazard of a bedroom that they're living in, and then we're shocked that they don't want to clean up their room. They have so much negative feelings and negative association with that behavior. If we create positive feelings with positive behavior, then we create momentum because there's hope. Right? That's why our child is doing it, is because there's hope for something in the future. When we use negative consequences, you get the behavior going, but you get it going out of fear. And I wouldn't even label that fear-based behavior as good, because a child's not choosing. And that's essential. It's an essential difference that it's really important for parents to understand, is when you take agency away, when you take choice away because you're using fear, it no longer qualifies as a moral action. And no matter how good that action is because there's no choice. And choice is essential. The choice to behave well is so essential. And that's what I love about this form of parenting. I love it so much because it teaches children to learn to love, to choose to behave well.
Which means we're going to raise adults who continue to make good moral choices even when we aren't looking over their shoulders.
Exactly.
That's amazing. That's really, really powerful. Snacks, snacks, snacky snacks, snacks. How many kids sing that song all day long, or whatever version your kids sing? Mom, can I have a snack? I have to give a huge shout out to today's podcast sponsor, Paleo Valley, because we rely on them for a lot of our quick, easy to grab away from home snacks. Paleo Valley makes our family's absolute favorite meat sticks, both beef and pork, although we're partial to the beef, and they are so easy to grab. And I know that my kids are getting good nutrition with a massive dose of protein, and this is grass-fed beef and high-quality ingredients, no junk, no fillers, no chemicals, no toxins. We've been huge Paleo Valley fans for a really long time. I have a couple subscriptions going, so they just keep showing up to my house, and you know what? The kids keep eating them. We do love them for their grab and go quality so that we can have them for out of the house. And most recently, my 9-year-old has been allowing things like fruits to go moldy in his backpack. So we just instituted a new rule that he only can take non-perishable things for his snacks, which means we're going to be going through a lot more Paleo Valley meat sticks. Check out all their flavors at kidscookrealfood.com/meat sticks. When you go to that link, you will automatically have a 15% off discount pre-loaded. Again, check out kidscookrealfood.com/MEATSTICKS. That's our favorite meat sticks for your family to try out. I have to ask though, because I can hear my listeners' brains churning. Okay, Ralphie, so it's lovely the way you said the whole room movie thing, but what of the child who just doesn't get it done for whatever reason? What happens at the end of the day?
Yeah, always. There's always that question, because I think that unfortunately we always default in our minds to what if they don't, right? I mean, I used to talk to parents about like, hey, instead of yelling for your children to come to dinner, which I don't love yelling and trying to get my children's attention. I don't like to be yelled at. And I know my kids don't like to be yelled at. So I chose to use a dinner bell instead and like ring it. And And then I'm like, okay, when it rings and come down to dinner, stop what you're doing and come down to dinner within a few minutes. And immediately parents are like, well, what if they don't? Well, what if they don't? Well, what if they don't? And I'm like, but what if they do? They know that you are walking that path of an assumption of what if they don't? They know it, they can feel it. Children map parents really, really well. And if they know that you're walking with the belief that their intention is that they won't do it, they know that. They know that. So first of all, switch your mind from what if they don't to what if they do, and walk that path and believe that they will and encourage them as if they will. So that's going to change everything, first of all. But yeah, okay. So maybe a child's having a bad day. Maybe they just can't, exercise their executive function to get the thing done that you want them to do. First of all, balance justice with mercy. If you're like, man, this is like been habitual. This is a major struggle for this child. If that's true, then hold your boundaries, follow through, and express empathy and compassion and say, what a bummer. I'm so sorry that it didn't quite happen, but I know you'll do better next time. I know you'll do better tomorrow. I know it. First of all, what you're doing is you're saying, that was your choice. You chose. And I'm sad. I'm sad for you that was the choice, but I know you're going to do better next time. That puts responsibility square on the child's shoulders rather than on you, that you're the one that took it away. That was a choice that they made. They made that decision. But if they're just having a bad day, find mercy within there. Remember that the law is love. The law is not, what does this child deserve? But the law is, what does this child need? Those are two totally different ways to think about parenting. What does my child need? And if my child needs me to follow through, then I'm going to follow through. If my child needs me to be merciful, I'm going to be merciful. So find what your child needs and make a decision based on that.
And empathy really is a powerful tool, I think, in our parenting toolbox. And it's one that's probably not used as much. It definitely comes with the package of the positive, whatever you'd call it, the positive process of when, everyone who has the clean room gets to come to the movie. And then if the kid doesn't make it, it's easier to say, I'm so sad for you, as opposed to the opposite, right? If you don't get this done, then it's, you didn't do it. It's harder to have empathy. So that if you take nothing else, folks out there listening, try some empathy with your kids. That models for them how we treat others, right? How we treat others whom we love.
Yeah. And I will also put in there that it creates a safety guard for your connection with that child. Now that I have children I have 2 adult daughters, I will say that the more parents can prioritize their connection and their healthy attachment and loving teamwork between child and parent, the better, because that's what's going to last long term. Sometimes parents will have a problem that's so big, like if you put your hand in front of your face, you're like, all you can see is my hand, right? Like all I can see is the problem. It's so big, it's so huge. But if you can pull the hand away from the face, you're like, actually, I can see around the problem. It's not that big of a deal. I think that's something that when we're a couple of chapters ahead in parenting, we're like, it wasn't that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. And when we sweat the little things, when we choose to sweat them, it just really harms the relationship. And what I like to say is relationship first, behavior second. It's more important to keep the relationship intact. And no, not to be a pushover or to be a permissive parent. Absolutely not. Part of holding on to that relationship is following through with the boundaries that you have, right? You're teaching them how to love unconditionally because you've chosen to follow through with your boundaries. To absolutely think about what's more important here. It's not that they actually brushed their teeth tonight. It's not that they actually picked up her dolls. It's not that he put away his bike. The point here is that I can teach you through my kindness, through my boundaries, through our limits, and through empathy, how to love in a way that's going to benefit them for the rest of their lives.
I really appreciate that you emphasize too that keeping boundaries is part of showing love, because there's always that pendulum of, permissive versus maybe too punitive. And sometimes when people hear positive parenting ideas about behavior is second and relationship first, they go too far. They go to the total permissiveness, but then kids don't feel safe if they have no boundaries. So thank you for emphasizing that, because it's definitely something that we all need to hear, that there is a middle ground, and it's a good place to be. Ralphie, the reason that we're even chatting today goes back to almost a year ago. Someone in my community forwarded me one of your emails. They were like, "Oh, like Katie, you're the life skills lady. Look, like Ralphie shared 20 skills a teenager should know," which is so fun for me knowing now. I didn't actually realize you had one as old as 21. So you're in phase 6 or 7 parenting here. It's awesome. And they sent it to me because we run our Life Skills Now summer camp, right? And like thousands of parents are resonating with that idea. Our kids and teens need to have life skills. They want to build their kids' independence. A lot of times they don't know where to start. So I'd love to hear you talk about life skills and how that fits into this positive parenting model.
Skills are fundamental. They're fundamental. One of the 4 pillars is to teach your child, right? That is so essential. A parent's role is to be their child's teacher. They are the primary teacher. Sometimes we outsource way too much. Like, oh, it's going to be, Coach Bud or whatever, or Mrs. Smith at school. But the reality is that parents are the number one teacher. And teaching skills, it's truly so much easier short term to just do things for your kids, right? I mean, we all know that. Or tell them to stop doing things. Our brains do that really naturally. But what's so funny to me is that we're on this default that creates something that we really hate. We don't like it. We don't want kids who are unthinking, obedient little robots. We actually don't want kids who can't do things for themselves. And we don't want children who lack resilience and don't have grit. But parents are always reminding me that they don't also want struggle. But the reality is we can't have both. We can't have both. We have to have struggle in order to build the skills, to build the resilience and build the grit. And this is why I am constantly reminding parents that parenting is a long game. And our goal is to never stop behavior, but to build skills that step by step teach a child how to be in control of their own life. And that means teaching deliberately and proactively, like you're doing through your programs, and letting them make lots and lots of choices, because with you, now is the best time in their lives to have those small failures and those small disappointments to learn from, where the stakes are low, the risks are low. And that's really the only way that a child gets better at making choices, is allowing them to make lots and lots of them.
I love just hearing you reflect so many things that I do say to parents. Like it's an 18-year game. Right? You got to look at the long play here. We can teach our kids. Yes, we are number one, they're teachers. But what about the pushback? I mean, parents really can feel it's a struggle for us, that pushback, especially when it comes to regular chores. And like, I kind of get it. Like, I hate doing dishes. but what tips do you have for parents who are struggling to find a chore routine that works?
Well, I would say 3 things, I guess. I would say, first of all, make it fun. Second, make it rewarding. And then third, focus on what they do well. With make it fun, children are really naturally motivated to do the things that they want to do. And PS chores isn't one of those things. So, I mean, shocker, right? But that's just the truth. And I don't make up the rules, unfortunately. If it were me making up the rules, I would say that they love to do dishes, but they just don't. They're just like us, right? Like you just said. So add music. Make a game up. Do something that's silly, and it can be something that's the same that you do over and over again. You don't have to be super innovative. We love to play really high energy music while we're cleaning up, while we're doing after dinner jobs. And I'll plug in a party light, which I'm a huge advocate for. They're like $10 on Amazon. And you just let it go and turn the lights off low. And within 10 minutes, your kitchen is clean. It's like magic. Or play a game. There's a funny song called The Floor is Lava. You can look that up. Where you clean up, and then as soon as they say the floor is lava, you jump on something, and and then when it stops, you get back down and clean. Or another way is time lapsing with your phone. Kids love that. If you just set up your phone and say, okay, we're going to do a time lapse, see how fast we can actually clean up the toy room or clean up the bedroom. So all of these are just really simple, silly ways to inject some fun, and that fun will magically create more momentum. The other thing that I would say is to make it rewarding. I'm a huge believer in connecting effort with reward. That's life. That's we grow up and we live life, our whole lives, with more effort that we put in, the more reward we get. I have a system called the family economy, where it teaches children effort equals reward, and they work within the home and they are paid for the work that they do, because their work and their effort helps the home run more smoothly. And so it's just kind of their jobs, their task to help it run more smoothly. So that's helped thousands of families. It's just been, it's also a great system to teach children about money, how to save it, how to spend it wisely, how to give it generously. And it's a really important teaching tool to help children to be better with time management, delayed gratification, like honesty, all of the things that we want our children to learn. And then the last thing that I would say about focusing on what they do well, this is something that's really hard for parents, I think, is because we always want to, again, we just naturally default to what didn't quite go right. And we want them to fix things according to our standard and what we think is complete or perfect. But if we do that, our children will lose momentum quickly. And again, long term, it's more important to create momentum and perhaps for our children to have a positive relationship, positive feelings with the tasks at hand. I like to tell the food scrap story, which is a story of my husband coming home late from some meetings. And he had asked my daughter to please do the dishes. And she had done them. And he had taught her before, hey, like in order to finish this task, you have to clean out the sink as well. Otherwise, the task isn't complete. And when he came home, the dishes had been done, but there was like food left in the sink. And his automatic response was, I'm going to go into her bedroom. I'm going to tell her, hey, you got to go back into the kitchen. You didn't finish up. You actually didn't do the task that I asked you to do. So you need to go fix that. And he thought, you know what? That's not going to help anything. That's not going to help her to feel good about the good that she did put out there. She washed hundreds of dishes, she washed a lot of dishes. So I'm just going to say what she did well. So he wrote her a note and he put it on her door and said, thank you so much, Erin, for doing these dishes. You did them really, really well. And I'm grateful for all of your help. I really appreciate it. Well done. And okay, so yeah, parents are like, what? But she didn't do it. She didn't complete all the things that she needed to do. I'm reminding you, long term, guys, think long term. For her to come be like, man, yeah, I am. I'm an awesome dishwasher. That's my identity, is so much better than I can never do anything right. Dad never thinks it's enough. I can never be enough for him. For that connection to be there, for her to have that self-confidence. And you bet your buttons that my daughter, she's 21 now, she is an excellent dishwasher. In fact, she's always telling me that she's the only one in her apartment that does the dishes. So it works. It really works to focus on what they're doing well and then saying, how can I help you with the rest? Or I'm just doing it in a positive way, or thinking, oh, maybe later I need to teach them away from this how to make the bed a little bit sharper, whatever that may be, but not in the moment when they come to you with they're like, oh, look, mom, I did it. And then for you to say, oh, not good enough, that's really disappointing. So focus on what they did well. All the research says it just is good and creates that momentum that you need.
Looking for the good. And I think a lot of us could get into the heads of our kids when we think about grades. When you get like even a B or a C and you're shooting for A's, it takes the wind out of your sails for a lot of kids. Some people are like really motivated and they want to work harder and get better. But a lot of kids just think, oh, yeah, I'm not that good at this. And that's a lot of heavy negative self-talk. That's a fascinating story to me, because I was thinking like, well, do you ever teach about the food scraps in the sink? So I'm glad that you came back and said, yeah, sometime later, maybe you do a little reteaching, or a little reminding, but not focusing on that act. Just here's how I do it when I do the dishes all the way to the end, narrating. It's fascinating. So we're in the kitchen already. And of course, at Kids Cook Real Food, we're all about getting kids in the kitchen. So do you see any particular benefits to that cooking and that eating process together, especially when it comes to looking for the good?
Oh, absolutely. Because you're just creating so many opportunities to be enthusiastic and give praise. Yeah, I love cooking in the kitchen with my daughters. I love that they feel confident that they can make something. And whenever, I figure out that they can make something well, I'm like, oh, you're hired. I'm never doing that one again. Whatever that is. I love that the families have opportunities to be together in a kitchen. It's just the heart of the home anyway. And to have those experiences together. Food is definitely experience. And, this research, I am sure, Katie, but it creates momentum that kids that cook are kids that eat the food that they cook. And even if it's salad, if the kids make salad, they eat the salad, anything like that. I've done some teaching around that as well. It's just so great to encourage them to have a wide variety of food that they feel comfortable with.
Nice. Yeah. And it is so powerful. I'm thinking about my 12-year-old. It's his responsibility to, it's called keep the family in dressings because we make homemade dressing. So when it gets low, it's like, all right, buddy, you got to do this. And I guess he had put it off for a number of days. So I went with the Post-it. That's at least, especially for him, he's got to see it. So a little Post-it on his place at the dinner table, just dressings today. And he got it done. So it's so good talking to you. Like, all right, that's got to be Katie's focus this evening is thank you for
Mm-hmm.
making this. We all love this dressing. It's so good for us. And piling on the looking for the good and the positive.
Yeah.
You and I share another platform, one of those soapboxes we stand on and say, parents, listen, the benefits of boredom, right? With all the tech, everything coming out of the screens at our kids, it's harder and harder for them to find a chance to be bored. So what do you do about boredom in your own home? Do you actually try to create space? Do you let it happen? Talk to us.
Yeah, I definitely create space for unstructured time. I think that it's wonderful for kids to just have space to do whatever they want to do with with their minds. And I don't really solve their boredom for them. I don't create experiences. I don't set out activities. I did when they were really little. Sometimes we would do things, but now that they're much more self-efficient, I don't really do that. There's just some really cool research about unstructured time. One done with children that are in a sandbox. Well, first of all, the average screen time is about 7 hours a day now for children, which is crazy. And that the research is that a child that's playing an educational game on an iPad versus a child that's in a sandbox and is eating sand, that it's better for the child's brain that's eating the sand than a child's brain that's playing the educational game on the iPad. So yeah, I absolutely try to protect that time for my kids to just be a kid, to do the task of childhood, which is to play, and to help them learn how to get into that rhythm, that deep play that really, helps build their attention span, helps build their vocabulary skills, helps build their cause and effect, all of that, all so much great brain growth going on when a child just has time to play.
It's so true. And everything you said, I think parents could go, well, but they could also build vocabulary on the screen. They could also, but it's just not true. Like, it's just, I read that statistic as well about 7 hours a day, and my brain clunks. And I go, gosh, I hope that's not in the summer. I hope that's somehow related to like schooling and doing your school on a screen. And then you go to a store and you see the toddlers in the carts, and you go to the restaurant and you see the 3-year-old watching a show. And I think, uh-oh, maybe it's not, maybe it's really true. It's terrifying. I think it's terrifying. So I'm glad that you are also waving that banner and say, this is not okay. Let's increase the boredom. Speaking of brains and parents, I feel like a lot of parents will feel like some friction about looking for the good. Like anything new feels a little hard. We got a little pebble in our shoe. And I feel like some of our listeners are probably thinking right now, all right, Ralphie, Katie, I don't have time to think this through. I don't have the capacity to change my words. I don't have the capacity to look for the good. Like I'm just survival. I definitely don't have time to, take the screens away and get on the floor and connect with my kids. What do you say to those parents, those skeptics?
I mean, there definitely is phases of our lives, first of all, where we are in survival mode. So just give yourself a lot of grace with that. And if you have kiddos that are hugged and kiddos that are clean and fed and tucked into bed, then you're doing all that you can right now. And the parenting there's a lot of education and learning that goes through parenting. So it's okay if you don't feel like you have everything going the way that you want it to right now. But what I would say is that if you think about it, it takes so much energy to yell. It takes so much energy to get mad. It takes so much energy to teach and teach and teach and teach, but you're teaching ineffectively because the child is crying while you're teaching, or you're mad while you're teaching. And so you're standing over them, monologuing and berating. There's no learning going on there when that happens. So the reality is that positive parenting, looking for what's good, it saves so much time. It saves so much energy because it's building skills that once a child understands, oh, this makes me happy, or this keeps me safe, or I feel connected to my parents this way, it saves so much time. And like I said, now I have 2 adult daughters. It protects the connection that you have with your child. That still my daughter will call me and say, hey, mom, I made a mistake. I did this thing. I talked to a roommate this way, and I want to do it better. Do you have any suggestions for me how I can do it better? I don't think that parents that yell and get mad and want to save time have those kinds of relationships with their adult children later. You want them to keep coming home. You want them to be beckoned home because of how they feel at home. So just remember that is your highest level. That is your highest desire as a parent, is for them to feel like your home is the safe place for them, that you are the safe place for them. And so we have to remember to learn how to stay safe. And that means even behaving in a way that we don't feel like behaving.
That is so special. Like I'm feeling sort of my nervous system settling as you deliver that final note, really, of inspiration. And it's so good to hear from someone who's reached, quote, the end of parenting, right? Launched a child into the world. Obviously, we're always their mothers, right? But it's so good to hear from someone who can say, yeah, it actually did work. My child still comes home. And I always say I love to leave parents with a message of hope, but you've done that for sure with that last answer. So how can people connect with you more? I know you've got a great free email course where people can go through your steps. Tell us a little about that.
Yeah. Yes. It's a free course. It's called the Stay Safe series, Why We Yell, Why It Doesn't Work, and What to Do Instead. And it comes with free printables and videos to help you to kind of build those steps of how to stay calm and what are some options to do instead, building some skills around that. And it's helped a lot of parents, and it's there for you for the taking. I'm so happy to be able to give it.
Good. And I can see that, especially for those of us who have maybe some not perfect habits entrenched, it would be great to hear all of this again, to read it with our eyes, to have a different learning style, have those printables to remind us. So that's over at Simply on Purpose, and we'll make sure that the exact link is anywhere we share this interview. Ralphie Jacobs, thank you so very much. This has been a good reminder for me to readjust some of my bad habits, and I'm sure it's a great reminder for our Healthy Parenting Handbook listeners. We appreciate you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Healthy Parenting Handbook podcast. I hope your brain feels fed and your heart feels full, and that you feel connected, knowing that there are other parents on this journey with you. We're just trying to raise healthy, independent adults. And the next time you think, man, there is no handbook for this job, now there is, the Healthy Parenting Handbook. Look up the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. Please leave a review, my friends, as that helps other parents who need this information to find us. And of course, subscribe. That's a huge help. You can also look for our shorts as a reel on Instagram at Katie Kimball Kids Cook, or subscribe to the Healthy Parenting Handbook Shorts channel on YouTube. You'll get those bite-sized portions of healthy parenting advice.